Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the podcast. This week we have a brand new course which has come out, which I'm very excited to share with you guys. It is a wax-based course, of course, because we're all about the wax jewelry at the moment. We have a slight wax jewelry obsession, nothing wrong with that. And it's by the wonderful Jo, who has her own jewelry business called Rockpool Jewellery. Some of you guys may know her already. She's been around the community for a little while, but this is her first podcast with us. So I'm excited that we get to introduce you to her and also the course. So the course is called Rings, Pendants and Charms in Wax, the Build-Up Technique. So this is our first Build-Up Technique wax course. And if you're thinking, what is that? Don't worry, we're going to go into that in just a moment. Jo's going to tell us all about it, but it is a really cool way to work in wax. So the course is out now. It's available on pre-sale for a couple of weeks, not very long, for 50% off. So if you're interested, after listening to this episode, definitely go ahead and enroll and sign up. It's available, and I can't wait to see what you guys make with it. But for now, let's get stuck in and learn a bit more about Jo and the wax build-up technique and all of the things. So Jo, welcome. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me to join.
Yes, I'm excited. We did filming recently together, didn't we? So it's quite move it along and see it come to life, and people get to actually experience the course that you created. So let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about how you came to jewelry making and, how you ended up doing wax.
So I probably started jewelry making about 2013, I think. I suffer quite badly with obsessive compulsive disorder, and it was recommended to do something creative as a good thing for mental health and something to help with that. So I started out with kind of beading, like stitching beads together. There was a company at the time called Beads Direct who did lots of like online tutorials and stuff. So that's where I started. But I very quickly discovered metal clay after that. And did my diploma with Tracy Spurgeon at Craftworks in about 2018, I think it was. I still love metal clay. I still use it. But obviously metal clay is quite pricey at times, particularly if you want to experiment, I guess. And it was during COVID, actually, that I discovered wax. I had my daughter during COVID. And I just wanted something that was a bit like, I could just sit at the table and have a bit of an experiment while she was asleep and that kind of thing. So yeah, but I mean, jewelry making for me in terms of my why about it was OCD takes a lot of different forms. Mine is kind of, I get a lot of anxiety. And when I started the beading and that kind of thing, it was the only thing I found where I could switch that off completely. The jewelry making was just, the complete focus. Whereas I've tried other things and it never really did that for me. So I think, just the process of creating and having the focus on what you're doing right in front of you. And then as I learned skills, obviously when you're learning, that focus is taken up a lot by just trying to perfect what you're doing. When I got, when I knew what I was doing with certain techniques, that became more about thinking about the stories behind the pieces, the images that I had in my mind as I was creating. So it's still very much I can switch off and just focus solely on jewelry thing and kind of give my mind that break, I guess, when I'm creating. So I think it's very beneficial for things like that. But wax for me is just so flexible. It's relatively inexpensive compared to other materials that you use for jewelry making, and a really good way to experiment and just kind of, if you're looking to find your style and design, it's a really kind of cost-effective way of doing that. You don't need a lot of expensive tools for wax. A lot of I don't cast kind of in-house in my studio myself. I do a little bit of sand casting, but the vast majority of my pieces are sent to a casting company, so you don't have that expensive setup for it. And I just think there's just so many opportunities with it. So many things you can do. And there's obviously the course that we're going to talk about is the build-up technique. And obviously there's very traditional wax carving. I have tried both. And I do very much think you're either a carver or a builder. I don't think you get many people who enjoy both techniques as much. And I'm definitely more of a builder than a carver. But yeah, there's so many possibilities. And with cast in place, casting stones in place as well. That's a whole other aspect to it, which is just, something that can take your design in a completely different direction. And there's some fabulous examples out there of people who have really perfected that technique, like Polly Wales. If you haven't seen her work's absolutely fabulous for cast in place. So yeah, I don't know, it opens so many doors, I think, wax, for what you can do. And like I say, relatively inexpensive on the tools. If you're just starting out and you're not quite sure if it's for you, you don't have to invest a lot to try it out before you decide whether that's a technique that you want to make your main form of creation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think you're so right about the low investment with the tools and the experimentation. And I think especially with the rising metal prices that we're all
Yes.
it's quite a relief to be like, oh, I could just make a collection in wax and then decide if I want to get it cast in silver or in gold or even in bronze or even at all. So you can really, it's great, isn't it, for the design of prototyping and all of that.
Definitely. And obviously you can have molds made of pieces as well. If you want to repeat them for collections, you can have your wax mold, either your wax piece, molded, or you can like have that piece cast, refine it, and then have it molded. And also, I think I personally I've sold pieces to customers where it's been in wax form. They've seen the piece in wax form, and I haven't cast it yet, but they've said, actually, I want that in gold or I want it in silver. And they have that flexibility of choice. It's not kind of already created. They can pick the metal that they want. So that design can be whatever they want it to be, which I think, if it's just an added extra choice for the customer, really. Then, it's not already there. They might say, oh, I really like that, but it's gold and I don't wear gold. Well, actually, if it's just in wax form, you can have it in silver if you want, or white gold, because it's not cast yet. So it's, from a sales point of view, it's quite good that way as well.
Yeah, I do think wax really lends itself to a jewelry business for a lot of the reasons you spoke about, prototyping and custom, being able to customize things that you can show them it in wax. They do have to get over the color and stuff, and imagine.
Yeah.
Once you kind of explain that and do that bit of education piece with them, you can sometimes adjust sizes of rings and things like that in the waxes, and you can add in bits, or especially if it's a big commission, just checking it in with your customer as you go along as well. Like, is this in line with what you had in mind?
Yeah.
It's such a great tool for design. And it's interesting that you came to it from metal clay. So you did your beading, like your journey. My journey also started with beading. I think it's so accessible. It's great. Low kind of initial expense, and you can just get started and get some great results. And then moving into the metal clay, I've kind of had a similar journey as well. And I think wax and metal clay, a lot of people who like one like the other, because it's that slightly different, usually it's slightly more organic look, isn't it, that we're going for. If we're looking for all precision and sharp line, you can do that in wax, but it's often, unless it's very 3D, it's often like sheet metal lends itself towards that. So it's so interesting to learn about the different materials and what works well. And also going back to, your why, thank you for sharing that with us. And I think I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, even without having OCD, but just the anxiety that comes up in day-to-day life, and being able to just focus in on the making and lose yourself in that space. And I do feel like wax particularly is like that. I can lose hours sat and I've done carving and build up, but it's just, I don't know, there's something about it. It's like the time just disappears and you're in this flow, the flow state that they talk about, I think. And and there's not time for the brain to be thinking or obsessing, I suppose, about other things. And we all obsessional thoughts from time to time, and just to know that, like, okay, let's get out of the brain and into the body and making something and doing something. And I can definitely relate to that shift and it just helps you to relax, doesn't it? Most of the time, unless it all stressful.
I think as well, particularly if you're just learning, you can make a mistake in wax. It's not going to cost you a fortune. If you make a mistake in silver, or your piece doesn't quite turn out how you've anticipated it to, there's obviously quite a bit of cost in some cases in there, particularly if it's a bigger piece or a heavier piece. Whereas with wax, quite regularly I'll have something in mind and I'll be creating it, and I'll go back to it the next day. I'm not quite happy with that bit. I'll just undo it and redo it. which is a lot easier in the wax than it is when you're soldering things together. You can just, you snap that bit off and you just start again. Or if your design changes as you're putting it together, it's a lot more flexible, I think, to just adjust that process.
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like, well, it's probably like this with most things, but particularly with wax, it starts and I have a vision and then it's coming together and then it looks terrible at some point. Like, and I just
Yeah.
like do it like this looks, what is this? I've spent hours on this and it looks terrible.
Yeah.
Know that if you just keep going, like most of the time it will come through the other side and then you start to see like, oh, it is coming together. And then in the end, and to have it come back from the casters in the metal is such an exciting part as well, I think, because
Yeah.
and it's usually been a couple of weeks and yeah, I love kind of that moment when you see it and it's like, oh, it came out really well and, cleaning it up and making it all really, really nice and shiny. But I'd
Yeah.
love to talk about the build up technique because we've
Yep.
mentioned it and it's in the course and well, it is the course. And you mentioned it before that there's kind of two camps often, the carvers and the builder uppers. So tell us, what is the build up technique? How is it different to wax carving?
So if you're looking at traditional kind of wax carving, you'll probably start out with either a block or a bit of wax tube, and you will use tools to essentially carve into that, file it down, refine it into the design that you want. With build-up, you're starting with nothing, and you use molten wax by applying heat, and you can do that in various ways. So rather than starting with something, you're starting with nothing and building that up bit by bit, rather than taking away, I guess.
Mm.
Um, so for me, it does probably lend itself more to a organic or textured style of jewelry, because naturally that is what you'll get with the build-up technique. That's not to say you can't do something that's very high polish or very refined or very traditional in it. You can. It's just possibly a little bit easier to do something in that very traditional style through a carving technique or through traditional silversmithing, in my opinion. But my designs are very organic anyway, inspired a lot by kind of coastal textures and things, and it lends itself really well to that. So I think, you can, and just because it's build up and you're using molten wax doesn't mean that the pieces have to be small and it doesn't have to take forever. There's lots of kind of tips and tricks that go with the build up technique where you can create kind of more substantial pieces using that. And yeah, I just think it's a really very unique way of making jewelry, because I think two people could kind of try and make the same style of ring in build up and they'd probably get a very different result just because of your own personal technique with how you do it. So it's giving something that's very original to you, really. So there's kind of ways that you can melt the wax with different tools that would be kind of suitable for different things. So in terms of the tools, there's not a lot of investment really to do build up if you want to just kind of experiment. You need some wax, and in the course you'll kind of hear about the different types of wax that there are. I use a lot of injection wax, which is very soft, has a very low melting point. Bit of blue wax as well, the blue ferrous wax that I think most people who look at wax carving probably see that one first and are familiar with that. You can use that, but you can also use the very hard green wax as well. And all of them have got their benefits for different types of design. But in terms of melting it, you can use like a wax pen, which is, I think they're about £20 on Cooks and Gold or something. So it's not a massive investment. It is an investment. That's a battery operated pen. You can get a little wax seal burner, which you'll see in the video that I do use, which is used for wax seals on letters. You can use that to heat fragments of wax in that and make it molten for certain things. And then there's a bit more of an investment, which is like an electric wax carver. So I use a combination of an electric wax carving pen and a battery one most of the time. And for different functions, really. But you can, if you just want to see if it's for you, the battery wax pen is more than sufficient. And you can easily do a pendant or, a ring with that without investing a bit more money. But now you can get wax carvers, electric wax carvers on Amazon for about 20 quid. and they're not necessarily called wax carvers. They might be called like dental wax carvers or something like that. But there's lots of tools out there that are not necessarily strictly advertised as jewellery tools, but they can be used for that function, without kind of paying a bit of a premium. So yeah, so it's just getting used to the different types of wax, I think, is one of the things that took me a little while, and the way they behave when you're trying to do build up with them, with the different melting points, and actually combining the different waxes as well. So using the hard green wax, which has a very different melting point to the injection wax, but I do mix the two. It is possible to mix the different types, and that can be really useful for your design as well, when you're trying to build up different elements on top of each other, to create settings, or to create, design patterns on things. So yeah, so there's just, it's really exciting once you get started. I think I got addicted to it. I just, I couldn't, had all these ideas, and just once I discovered the build up way of doing things, it was just so much more for me than the carving was. But
Yeah, it's a different mindset, isn't it? Because like you said,
yeah,
carving, you're starting with something and you're taking away, and with
yeah,
the build up, you are building it up. So it's, yeah, essentially it's taking little molten bits of wax, or not necessarily little, but and then adding them on top of each other. And in this course, you show us how to make a ring, a really gorgeous little ring with some stones in. Also, some really cool techniques for making a pendant, which I've never seen before, which are really exciting, with melting the wax rather than carving it. And of course, those pendants could be charms, and you can edit and adapt the sizes of things. And it does look very addictive. I've not got massively into the build up yet because of time, but it's on my list, and I feel like now is probably the time for me to go for it while everyone else is doing it together.
yeah.
And it just looks so fun to work with. And I think you're right. Learning about the different waxes is so interesting because, like you said, they have different melting temperatures. So if you want something to have a detail on top of something, and you want one part to melt but the other part not to melt, learning all of those things, which is, like you said, is a bit of trial and error, but you also cover the different waxes in the course and talk about it. And excitingly, you've got another course for us as well, don't you? Which is a more advanced level build up technique course, which is going to be inside the Diploma in Wax Jewellery, which hopefully you guys have heard about by now. So that one is kind of making more fine jewellery. And there's a ring that you make on that course, Joe, that everyone in the team has fallen in love with, which was this gold ring with this gorgeous princess cut diamond. And I sent it off to Karen Young for photography recently, and she was like, "Can I just keep it? Like, it's just be mine." And everyone who sees it, it's like, tries it on, it's like, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing." And it's just incredible, the versatility from, some simple kind of alphabet letter pendants that people can get started with it, which is great if you're new, all the way up to sort of those more advanced claw setting, shape stones and all of that. And I love, and I think people should definitely go check out your website as well and see the kind of jewelry you make, because it's stunning, what you can do with these techniques. Yeah, maybe we can talk a little bit about your business and how it's evolved alongside your techniques as well.
Yeah, so when I first started out making jewelry, I wasn't trying to sell it or anything. It was just for me. And when I moved into the metal clay, um, I actually really wanted to teach. So I kind of used the teaching to fund my experimentation for my own designs, really. And I didn't really sell at that point. I just taught beginner metal clay classes. Um, and I think through having that time to experiment and kind of find my style, I guess, was really beneficial. And I think my inspiration has always kind of been natural textures. I kind of started out with more kind of, leaves and twigs and things when I was doing metal clay, because you can obviously use the metal clay to paint on leaves and things like that. But I live by the coast. It's a big part of my life. And there's just so much inspiration, I think, there. And creating some of those textures and things in wax, it just really allowed me to bring some of those design ideas to life. So now I'm not a full-time jeweler at the moment. I've got a little girl, certain commitments that I have to make sure that I can meet. And the business is growing, but it's not growing as quick as anticipated, I guess, maybe. But it's growing and I'm building it up and probably I've focused a lot on the jewelry side of my business, I guess, in terms of finding my design style. And now I'm having to learn all the other things like, photography and social media and all that kind of stuff, all the other things that you don't think about when you think, oh, I want to sell my jewelry, all these other business aspects of it that you need to kind of to pick up. So that's kind of where I am at the moment. So I sell kind of directly through my website, but I'm stocked locally and in about, I think, 5 stores now, in the Northeast only. But that's kind of like been my kind of route to finding my customers, I guess. And I think I always thought to sell it online, but actually with jewelry, it's such a personal thing and such a tactile thing. I think for people to be able to pick it up and see it, and then that's driven them to the website afterwards. I think one of the things personally that I struggle with is the idea of creating a collection, because I get an idea and I want to create that one piece. And it doesn't necessarily lend itself to like a full collection of those pieces, like that gold ring that I created for this course. I just had an idea and I wanted to do it. But there was no kind of pendant idea to go with it or a bracelet. So I do quite a lot of one-off pieces. I have core collections, but there's a lot more that goes to the stockists and stuff. That is just, there's only one. It can be made again, but it'll never be exactly the same. Same twice because of the process to use it. But my dream is for the business to be my main job. But at the moment, it's not. But that's hopefully where it'll go in the future. And I think a lot of jewelers are like that. From people I speak to who are doing the same thing, it's a balancing act. It's a very difficult time, I think, at the minute, particularly with the metal prices, which is what everyone's talking about, but just other things that impact. And I think it's about enjoying it, but making sure that it's still a viable way to be profitable, and kind of make sure that you can sustain yourself on it. It is a very delicate balancing act at times. But it's definitely possible. And I would say as well, for anyone who's kind of maybe just starting out, some people do have these meteoric rises and they launch a collection and it sells out immediately, and that's great. That hasn't been my experience, but mine has slowly built year on year. So really, I probably only started really trying to sell 2021, 22. And year on year it has grown, and it's a steady growth. So it hasn't been from 0 to 100, but it's getting there and it's improving each time. And I think at first I was like, why is this not happening? I see these people who've they've launched and they've just sold out immediately, and that doesn't happen for me. And I would say, don't let that be disheartening, because progress is still progress. And I am getting to where I want to be. Didn't happen instantly like I wanted it to, but it's definitely getting there. And obviously I've been able to do this for Jewelers Academy, which has been another step in the right direction for me. And it's just, these things sometimes take time, and you've got to be patient with yourself and not kind of rush it, I guess, as well. And I think if I'd had that when I first started making jewelry, if things had kind of suddenly taken off, I think I was still at that point, still refining my style, rather not finding it, but refining what I found. And I think now I've got a lot more understanding of what my kind of brand identity is and who my customer is and all that other stuff that goes around the actual jewelry piece, which is really important, I think, for the longevity of the business.
Absolutely. And I think, thank you for sharing that, because I think it is much more the norm, but it does take a long time to build a successful jewelry business. And I love what you shared is like, it's not happened as quickly as you wanted, but it is happening.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we can feel disheartened, like, well, if it doesn't happen within my time frame, then I don't want, almost like a toddler tantrum, like, well, I don't want it then. But that's not the truth. Like, we do want it, and it does take time. It's a trust-based business. It takes time to build momentum. And I also love that you shared that actually, if it had happened too quickly, it might not have been as good in terms of you having the time to develop all the skills and and to have the time to invest in yourself, I suppose, in terms of, what's my style, refining it, and social media, how do I do that, and how
Yeah.
get the balance and fit it all in. So I always think that slow growth is sustainable growth, and so it's lovely to hear that's what's happening with you. And and these people that sell out overnight, they've often been in business about 10 years. So
Yeah.
it's that
Yeah.
like overnight success that took 10 years to get to. Because otherwise they probably wouldn't even have the facilities to ship it all out and everything, because it's so good to share the honest truth behind it, which is that it's not quick and it's not easy, but it's moving and it's going there. And I think you're doing
Yeah.
amazing things, and you've got a great website, and it's exciting that we've got to do some courses together. And I love that you're sharing this technique, because it's something that we've not done before that we've wanted to explore a bit more. And I think people who are learning and who are starting out with these things, like, it's just such an exciting time, because you never know where you're going to take it. And you also mentioned that every single piece is going to be different, unless you get a mold made, which is also can be,
Yeah.
if you do have a sort of core collection. Um, and how wonderful is that every single piece was built up by hand and, handmade by you. And I just think the process of the build up technique feels very achievable to do. Some jewelry making, I have to get in the right mindset before I can do it, because I know it's going to
Yeah.
be hard. Like, before I sit down to do some pave setting, I'm like, right, okay.
Yeah.
Have I had my coffee this morning? Like, whereas wax is a bit more like, oh, just, give it a little go and pick it up. And so it's a nice way to make jewelry, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I'm talking stone setting is something I have to build myself up to. That's my I'm like, I'll have a nice calm stone setting session today. Whereas other days I can just go in, and I tend to have several pieces on the go at once. And I'll just pick up whichever one I feel like working on at that point, whichever one is I'm in the right frame of mind to continue with that design, or I know where I want to go with it. Um and obviously, like, if you were doing that in metal, that's quite a lot of metal sitting on your bench waiting to be finished. Whereas with wax, it's just, you can kind of take your time with it and experiment. And when what you mentioned about the molds, making molds. So I do, some of my main collections are molded. So a lot of my hoop earrings and stuff are molded, because the getting that design right took quite a while, getting the right shape and things like that. But once you've got that mold as well, it also means that you can refine that design into something else. So what I'm doing at the minute is I have a pair of earrings that I call my bubble hoops, which are such essentially granulated hoops, um, all done in wax. And I'm adding stones into those, some diamonds into a set of them, but it's essentially the same base. But then the stone settings have to be added into that base model. So you can have one design but have multiple possibilities with it when you get it molded, which I think is, or you can have, you can make a very basic ring with a round stone setting in it. But then you can adapt that basic ring and make it completely different. But you've got that, if you know you're having a round stone, you don't have to build all that up from scratch again. You can adapt the size, and you can change the claw placement, but you've got the basic shape there, just to kind of speed that process up a little bit. Because I think, a lot, when you're making jewelry, a lot of the investment is your time in making it, which, to pay yourself, that's a cost that you've got to consider. And it just makes that a bit more kind of cost effective when you've got those base shapes to help you start
Absolutely.
collections.
Yeah, I feel like when I'm making a ring in wax, the first part is always the same. It's just trying to get it. Well, with carving, it's like trying to get it from a big giant thing into something that looks more like a ring. And I guess with build up, it's like just creating that initial, band, and going from there. So I think at first it's great to just learn and experiment and play, but you've got to the stage now where you know some of the pieces that you're going to be making, so you can create molds, have those bases, so that you're sort of good to go and you can just build on top of it. Because you're right, the time element is so important, in terms of, making sure there's profitability and keeping our costs affordable and all of those things. So yeah, well, I'm just really excited where people are going to take it, and me and Jo both can't wait to see your creations. Jo, just while we wrap up, are there any kind of final tips or bits of advice that you'd give to anyone who's starting out, maybe going to take the course and inspired by your journey? Any words of wisdom you'd like to share with them?
I would think just don't be afraid to experiment and don't be afraid for it to go wrong. Like you said earlier on, sometimes you'll look at it and you'll think, oh my God, that looks horrendous. How is that ever going to be what I've pictured in my head? But I think with wax, you do get this really ugly stage where it's not quite what you think it's going to be. But if you keep working through that, you will get to the piece at the end. And, you know, just it's just there's so many possibilities. So if you've kind of maybe kind of shied away from doing something in metal, either because of the cost or because you don't think if you're able to do it with your skill set, have an experiment in wax, do something similar. You know, it's like a relatively cheap way of doing it, and you might actually find that you get something more like what you wanted than trying to do it with other methods. And yeah, I just think, you know, if anyone wants to reach out, I'm always happy to help. If anyone's really stuck with kind of, well, this is happening, why is that happening? Because, you know, I think it happens in the video actually to me, granulation in wax, which is incorporated in some of the projects, is a little bit tricky when you first try to start it, and you get what I call a bit of a splodge where the wax just over melts, and you think, oh, and if that keeps happening, it can get quite frustrating. But there's lots of little tips and stuff that you can that I can pass on to, you know, with how that works. And yeah, so don't invest a lot in a lot of tools to start with, especially if you're just trying it for the first time. Just try the basic ones, and some of the stuff that you've got in your workshop already. So, you know, kind of polishing papers, different grit papers and stuff. You can use all that for refining the wax. The thing I probably would invest in if you want to take it forward is a proper wax file, because it does clog up ordinary files quite quickly. So I would get a proper wax file for just kind of refining and stuff. But things like I use the Wolf wax tools, but they are an investment. So I wouldn't immediately go out and buy them straight away. They are fabulous, but only if you know you want to continue with wax. So yeah, just try it and see if you like it first before kind of taking that step into the bigger tools. Because I think as jewelers, we've probably all done that and gone, oh, that tool looks amazing, I'll have that. And then I've got some that I've maybe used once or twice on my bench, but I thought, oh, I'll need that at some point and I'll buy it. But find out if it's for you first. And yeah, I'd be really excited to see what people create with it and see kind of what designs people come up with, because I think, you know, even if you have a similar idea as somebody else, your process of making it can just make it so different and put your individual stamp on it. And I think that's a really exciting thing about wax, and particularly the build-up technique. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, no, I'm excited as well. And I love what you shared about the tool. And, you know, a lot more's covered in the course about the tools. So do go and check it out. It's really good value at the moment and you'll learn so much. So I'll make sure I put a link in the show notes where you can sign up for the course. And Jo, if people want to learn more about you and connect with you, where's the best place they can find you online?
So I'm on Instagram's what I use most. So I'm on there as at Rockpool Jewellery. So you can reach out, you know, direct message me on there, or my email address, which is on my website. It's rockpooljewellery@outlook.com. If you've got any questions, obviously, you know, happy to help. I love passing on my tips to other people if it's helpful, because a lot of people have been very generous in the past and done that with me. It's helped my jewellery journey so much. So, you know, here to help. I think it's, you know, for me, what Jewelers Academy is all about is that community of jewelers helping each other. So I'm always here for any questions. And, you know, I think sometimes we can be afraid to ask a question, like, you know, does that sound a bit silly or whatever? But there's no silly questions especially in jewellery making. So yeah, always here if anyone needs anything.
Oh, lovely. That's so kind, Jo. Thank you. And yes, I agree. So do reach out if you need any support. There's also the Facebook group. The Jewels Academy Facebook group is a great place to ask questions because then other people can see the answers and
Yes, definitely.
or take a look. And yeah, and come and share your work with us. Tag us at Jewels Academy and Jo. What's your Instagram handle, Jo?
So it's at Rockpool Jewellery.
There we go. Easy to
Yeah,
remember. And Rockpool.
remember.
Show a tag as well. We'd love to see the pieces that you make, and hopefully you become as obsessed with the build-up technique as we are. But Jo, thank you so much for coming and sharing a bit about your
No
story
problem.
today and sharing about the build-up technique, and for sharing your information in the course as well. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next week on another episode. Have a wonderful rest of your week and take care. Bye for now.